I feel it's really important that before we start with what's new, I need to talk about where we came from. Okay, and this is where really where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the original glass media mat that I did with Tonic. I did this back in 2018. So if you think about it, we're talking over 6 years ago. I launched these glass mats with Tonic in black, and I'm going to talk about those, and then I'll talk about the new. At the time, I'm not saying by any means that I invented a glass mat, not what I'm saying at all. But as a maker and someone that has been in the industry for a long time, a glass surface was not a common used creative surface. Some people had glass cutting mats, other people used mats mostly for drawing or measuring. But as far as an inking, making surface, most of us worked on a craft sheet. I mean, I worked on Ranger's craft sheet for most of my crafting career because I wanted a nonstick surface. And when I had the opportunity to develop this with Tonic, it was really inspired by a table they had in one of their booths, which was this big glass cutting mat table. I'm like, that's really cool. Like, you guys made that? And we kind of went this route for creating the media mat. And I wanted a black and white surface. Why? Because there again, I didn't see any dark surfaces out there. And I feel that certain times when I'm creating, I do like that black surface because it provides way more contrast with what I'm seeing. You know, if I'm looking at a color or a card, I really loved the contrast that the black provided with what I was working on. But that doesn't mean that I didn't want creative options, which is what today is all about. Now, these are called a media mat for a reason, because this was all about mixed media. It comes in two sizes. It comes in the standard size, and it also comes in a travel size. And the travel comes with this neoprene case. It's almost like neoprene is kind of like a scuba suit kind of thing, very stretchy, and this is where your mat would slide in. It's kind of like a laptop protector, and this goes around. And both of these mats have the same features, so I'm just going to talk about this big one so I can set this little one aside for now. But the reason I call this a media mat is because I do a lot of different mixed media. I do inking, I do embossing, I do stamping, die cutting, and a lot of other ink work that requires a non-stick craft sheet type material. Now, this craft mat is white. It has this like silicone gripper on the back, and when you peel it off, it reveals a palette area. What's cool about the palette area of this media mat is that it's got these little squares where you can take your mini ink cubes or drips of paint, use it as a palette. You've got a mixing area, and you can create. This is really important for inking, and I'll talk about this surface as well because we've developed it in different sizes and different ways that you can include a mat in your surface. But really it comes down to just wanting a glass surface to work on, and of course having a non-stick mat. Now, this was all great. I was happy with it for many, many years. But honestly, as I've gotten older and I look at stuff, I feel that I wanted a brighter light source. And that was really kind of what started me down the road on developing this new mat. So this new mat, thanks, Mario.
You're welcome.
He's got those. This is the new studio mat. So it's a glass studio mat. And what's different between the media mat and the studio mat is the media mat has that palette and that craft sheet. The studio mat does not. It is a fully gridded, edge-to-edge, bright white mat. And I have to give a shout out to the team at Tonic because they were so patient with me, honestly. When we first started developing it, magnetic mats were all the craze, and I'm like, oh, I want to do a magnetic mat like everyone else. And honestly, I was doing it, and then the voice of reason, Mario, he's like, you don't like those. And I'm like, I really don't, but that's what people do. He goes, but that's not you. You need to do what you like. There are options out there if you like magnets. I personally don't like magnets. I just find that they get in my way. And I also see the industry has probably shifted more towards sticky mats and grip kind of mats for working anyway. So this is not magnetic, nor is the media mat. It's just a glass mat. It is made out of the same tempered glass. It is printed on the back. It has the little feet, exactly the same size as the glass media mat and the travel mat. This studio mat, because I wanted it as bright white as possible, I went with black graphics because I felt that when you have gray graphics, besides that my eyes just can't see them, it also kind of gave an overall cast of, I don't know, like a grayness to the white. This is a bright white glass mat. It does come in both sizes. So the studio mat is available in the regular size and the small one. You can see on the small one, I even cleaned up the case. So on the medium mat, kind of was grungy and kind of yellowy. This is like, hey, if we're going clean, we're going to clean up the case. So same rules apply where we've got that great gridded mat that's in that neoprene case. This is the travel size. And it's really a nice work surface, again, because you have that edge-to-edge option when it comes to working with glass. And I think working on a glass surface is important. You want to have those options that, maybe you're working in a smaller space, so you're going to want the travel one. Maybe you're going to have a bigger area. And this was designed with both imperial and metric measurements. So any of your measuring that you want to do. And I'll talk about kind of how these, and both of the mats are done exactly the same way with measurements. When it comes to working on a surface, I'll talk about just the small one. You can see right in the middle, there's like that little plus sign. That's kind of the center of your mat. But we wanted to make some pretty easy references for makers. So if you go down into that bottom left corner, that's your 0 mark, and everything measures out from there. So if you wanted to, quickly measure a piece of cardstock or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily have to get out a ruler. You can just take your piece of paper, you can bring it down into that corner, and you can quickly get your measurements there. Now on this side, these other edges, this one actually has a 0. This is going to be your centering area. So if you wanted to bring something up to the top, and let's say you put this piece of paper, I'll hold it closer just so you can see. I'm not going to hold this mat close, and I'll zoom in when I get into the ruler. But you can see here that if you place your paper, you can easily identify like where the center is, where the 0 is. And you can work anywhere on your glass mats. The other reason why I called this a studio mat is in the world of social media, we do a lot of Instagramming, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube lives where we're looking for that nice camera surface. And I found that even though this is glass, it is not as reflective as the black one, because the black one, it's almost mirrored. It really wants to show every shadow. I'm not saying this doesn't still reflect light. The trick really, if you're doing a lot of video with this, is to have your light source come from the front. My light is over here. It's not above it. Anything overhead is going to show up. So if you are into to doing videos and things like that, that's really the trick. You can still see it's got some reflection, but not nearly as bad as the black one did. That was the other reason why I wanted to do a bright white studio mat. But more than anything, it's about color. It's how do colors show up on this mat? Well, they show up amazing. They show up fabulous. They show up beautiful. I love the fact that from a creative surface, you can really see the color. And again, I think it has to do with the white surface and that black line. It does. It just creates a good contrast. It also doesn't have a lot of little fussy measurements in between the grids. I kept it the same gridded design as the original glass media mat, and that's not going anywhere. Remember, this is creative options. So Tonic is going to continue to have the media mat, which is that black with the craft mat, as well as the new studio mat, which again, I love creative options. So before I get into the tool, I want to keep talking about surfaces and other options you have if you decide to go this route, or maybe not. Maybe you already have a glass mat that you're perfectly happy with. Good on you. Keep it, because when you're like, how is this better? It's, other than what I've just told you, that would be the only way that makes it better, if those creative options are better for you. When it comes to working on this though, here's some things to note. Because it's glass, there's a lot of cool things that we can use on glass. And this would work on any glass mat, not just this one, any kind of glass mat. But I always kept in mind about having some other surface options. Now, as I mentioned, that little tiny craft mat that comes with the media mat, it just peels off and you work with it. You can see they get pretty beat up. I mean, that mat, Mario, would you mind peeling off that white mat from my media mat just so I can show you? I probably used that one for, I don't know, maybe, thanks Mario, for a couple of months. And this is what happens over time. Depending on what you use on this, be that inks or anything, they will start to permeate through this, because this is a fabric that has a non-stick coating and of course that silicone back. But it doesn't change how it works. And I know some makers, like I know Natifa specifically, because I see that in her on Instagram all the time. Like, it's a cool, and Marlise also has, like, it's almost like a cool background because it's so stained with inks. That's okay. Like, be okay with it. But this is always been in availability. It's called a replacement mat that you can get for the mat. You could also just buy one if you wanted a nonstick surface for your studio mat. That being said, when you use it, these corners do start to roll up pretty quick because it gets ink and stuff under it. And that is why I created these that we launched. I think we launched these maybe last year, I think. Time is not good with me. These are called media surface mats. Now, what makes these different than that replacement mat that I just talked about? Well, again, it was all about thought. It was about covering a surface for mixed media. So both of these mats, there's one for the regular size mat and one for the travel, and the travel will always say travel, so you know it's a travel size. I already have mine. I store mine in, it's called a Viewtainer. I know a lot of stores started selling these as well. You can pick these up. It's a great little container that has this rubber top. It doesn't come with this. You saw it comes in the box. But this is what is really great about the media surface mat. The media surface mat is that same silicone backed craft mat that comes with the media mat, but it's got these stitched on rubber corners. And these rubber corners are weighted so they don't peel up. But this will allow me to actually place it onto a glass mat edge to edge. So if you were doing, say, mix, and don't worry about air bubbles. I mean, you can squeeze them out, but this is going to go on and off. The great thing about this now is, let's say you were going to do a mixed media project. Maybe you were going to do collage and you were doing glues and you were doing pastes and you were doing all of that mucky stuff that you wanted to have an easier cleanup. You could use this mat because it cleans up so much easier on a non-stick mat. Will it clean up on the glass? Yes, and I'm going to talk a whole segment on cleaning and how to clean and what to use and all of that. But this is why we want options, because if we get into messy things, paints, inks especially, I'll do a quick demo on inks on this. It is really important to have this particular surface because certain mediums work different or act different on a non-stick matte type surface than they do on glass. And yeah, the corners just kind of flop down. It's so nice. I absolutely love this mat. Both of these surfaces are completely heat stable, so you can use a heat gun, you can use an embossing gun. It's not gonna, nothing is going to happen with that. I do want to talk about these corners and why I wanted these stitched on, because the weighted corners, you can see, it just makes all the difference. This was inspired by, like, back in the day, those, I think they called them like desk blotters or ink blotters, like you would see it on an office desk, you know, with leather corners and the paper, the calendar went under there. And I just thought it was very clean looking. So I really wanted to put those corners on. When I store it, I like to roll it just into itself. If you ever find that the silicone backing is not gripping to the glass, just wash this. You can wash it with soap and water. It could be warm water, cool water. Heck, you can put it in the dishwasher if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you get too much dust buildup on this, it's not going to grip as well. And that's why I like to keep mine, well, in a container like that, because it's pretty important. But because I saw in the chat there's a lot of talk about the corner, which is good, I will talk about these, because this is funny. And every time, you know, we have a glass mat, these corners, these little, they look really cool, these rubber corners, they will come on your mat when you receive it, right? When the mat comes in, I'll just bring in the travel one, but it's shipped in a box, and these corners are on your mat and they're in there. Some people actually prefer to leave these on. It's not designed to be left on. It's certainly not going to hurt if you like to leave your corners on, but some people like to leave them on, and you can put them on that way. Some people slide them on this way. I don't know, maybe it's just a safety feature, or just I don't know why, because see, you can slide them on. It doesn't actually touch the table because the little gripper feet underneath the mat is what's touching the table. But it's not going to hurt if you leave them on, but I don't use mine because when I go to clean it, I either knock them off or I get stuff under there. So I just had it because I took this out of the box, but my other ones I've already discarded because I don't need them. I don't use them, but it's okay if you do. So I wanted to kind of set that rumor straight, because sometimes people go, what's this? What's this? You know, I kept mine. Oh, you need mine. Oh, no, you don't. It's totally up to you. So when it comes to working with tools, I love working with tools, and there's a lot of different tools that I've developed with Tonic over the years, from trimmers to scissors. You know, we talk about the recoil scissors that we did this year, which still, have I done some fussy cutting? I have. Like, I have no fear now with these. I just love them. But this white surface has made it really easy to do more detail stuff. And I never thought I'd say that. I mean, I saw Zoe mention that comment at the very beginning of like, I never thought I would see, Cindy goes, I finally convinced myself to throw them out. I finally like never thought that I would want a white surface over black, because obviously that was the choice that I did from go because I really liked it. However, I just think that for certain projects, it's not like I have both and I work with both. It really just depends on what I'm doing. But if I'm doing some detail work, especially color, and that's why I'm going to bring in all the different inks just so you can see how they show up, it was really important that I had what I felt was a brighter surface for my eyesight. Again, maybe it's an age thing, I don't know. Maybe it's an aesthetic thing. Everyone has different tastes for their studio. But having different tool options, I've never really talked much about the different tools. They kind of get overshadowed by cutters and trimmers. But this was something that I was really passionate about to develop with Tonic. And I have to say, again, 1,000 thanks to the team at Tonic, especially Richard and Simon, who probably went back and forth on this ruler. I don't even know how many times. It would be dozens of times because I kept modifying what I wanted this tool to do. This is called a media ruler. Now, the reason I did the media ruler, if you're a fan of the original ruler that I did with Ideology, that ruler, the design ruler, has been retired. Because I wanted to replace it with a media ruler. I wanted to do so many different things, and that's what I love about brands that work well together. Advantage is like, yeah, that's something that's kind of out of our thing. You go ahead and do that with Tonic, and we'll retire the other one, which is great. Because there were features that I really wanted to include in a new ruler. You know, that whole wouldn't it be cool mindset. So here's what's great about the media ruler. First of all, it has both imperial and metric measurements. So whether you're going to work with inches on one side or you want to work with centimeters on the other. The other thing, and probably the most important thing, I'll even put a piece of cardstock under here so you can see, all of the markings on this are actually engraved. They're laser etched in here. So if you need to clean the ruler for any reason, you can clean it. Whereas the other one, if you use any solvents, you would literally wipe off the numbers, or they would wear off over time. It just happened. Just from wear and tear. It is what it is. But this one, we wanted to go in and actually etch this. So it's etched from the back, and that's what adds that color. It has piercing holes, which I'll talk about, that you can use a craft pick to actually pierce holes. It has a embedded metal edge on each side of this ruler, so you can cut. For people that still like to cut with a craft knife, you can cut with it. But the most important feature for me on this ruler was a very, very slim profile. A hole that if you want to hang it up, that's what the hole is for. That's all it is. Because some people, you know, like I have little, you know, IKEA hooks in my studio that you can, you know, put it through the hook and you can hang the ruler. Some people hang it on the wall or have a ring. That's the only purpose. If you're not going to hang it up, then it's just decoration. But the most important thing for me really was this back part. And I don't know if you can see. These are grip rails. These grip rails, there's these little tiny bumps. Can you see those in the top? There, now you can see my light from outside. These little tiny bumps are extruded silicone. So instead of the silicone strip being glued in there, because I didn't want it glued in there, because if you glue the silicone in there, there's a chance it's going to fall off, and I didn't want that. Again, we went back again and again and again. I wanted something that when you put this in, it would actually extrude inside and secure these grip rails. So these grip rails mean that when I lay my ruler down on glass, it doesn't move. It's not sticky, it's grip. It's that same kind of grip that we have in, where's the box? I put it off to the side for a reason. The media grip. So the media grip was really just an inspiring thing. Again, I know there's so many sticky mats and all that. This is not a sticky mat, it's really a grip mat. You've seen me use it in many demos because you can cut it apart. I have it cut for so many different surfaces that I use, but it's essentially just a really thin, almost paper thin silicone. This is the backing that's on the craft mat, but it's the silicone for both sides, and you can put it on your mat, and then if you put your card on it, it would grip the card. Again, it's not sticky, so there's no peeling, and you can wash and reuse it indefinitely. So that grip, I really loved how it worked with the glass, and I'm like, could we somehow get these cool little grip rails attached? And it took some engineering on their part, which was amazing. That's what they do, to create these rails. And these rails will hold the ruler up off the surface just slightly, so it will allow really easy placement. Now, I'm going to try to zoom in, which is, I always get nervous, guys, when I do a live because I could reset the whole camera and it's game over, but I'm going to try. Here we go. Let me just see if I can get down a little bit. There we go. Hopefully that's not too much. So the great thing about this ruler is that when you work with a card, and we can work with all the things. I mean, gosh, not that you need to. I certainly don't want you to think you need to, but let's say you're really into, precision things with your cards. You can take a piece of media grip and you can place that down onto your mat. You can take a piece of cardstock if you've already cut it, or you can have your grip bigger, but then you are covering up your grid. That's why I like to sometimes cut the grip down. But then we can place this ruler down. And because these grip rails are there, it's going to grip the card that's here, and it's also going to grip the mat. So if you're doing any type of lines, or even if you're not drawing, and you're not cutting, and you're not poking holes, maybe you're literally just doing this because you want to place your die cuts down. You can position all of this stuff straight, get your ruler lined up on the grid, because that's the whole thing. I know a lot of people like using T-squares and going off to the side, but if you're working on a gridded area, everything's squared because you line up your paper to the grid, you line up your ruler to the grid, and now you can go in and position your die cuts, your letters, all of that. Exactly. Grip combined with grip. That's it. It's just about having options that to me are just, they're quicker. I can just go for it. And you don't have to have the grip under your card if you don't want to. If you just wanted to put your card down and you put the ruler down, the ruler is still going to grip and it's still going to grip. So if I hold this, the grip ruler is kind of, it's gripping onto the glass and it's gripping onto the paper. So you're not really doing a dance, but you can see that if you're not holding down, you could move it, but you'd have to try to move it. It's not going to float away. That's the other thing that I talked to Mario about. Like, sometimes people want to over secure things. Maybe that's my issue with magnets, where it's like click, click, click. What, is it going to blow away somewhere? I just want to be able to place it down, use it, and be on your way. And by no means am I making fun of anyone that loves magnets. Let's just get that out of the way. But there's always a reason, like I said at the very beginning, of why designers design products the way they do, because they like that. So if you like that technology, that's what you buy into. That to me is what's super important about working with the whole concept of the rulers and the tools. So what are the functions of this? Well, there's a lot of little gadgety tools that I've done with Tonic. First, this is a scraper. So if you're cleaning off your craft mat, this came with a media edge, which is actually a clear acrylic that had almost a T-square thing that you had to, and they still sell it. It comes in a 2-pack. It has no markings on it, but it's a piece that hangs over the side of your glass mat that you could use as a T-square. I just found that I didn't really use it much because I always had to work off to the side. But this scraper thing is cool because it has glass particles in it. You can hear it when it hits the glass mat. So it has a really nice scraping edge. It doesn't wear out like a plastic scraper. It also has a little bit of like silicone, so you can just go in and scrape off glue and paint. You can also use a razor blade to clean it, but I use my scraper a lot, mostly probably for re-inking my ink pads, and you can see I use it for all types of different things. Then we have these weird little gadgets that maybe you've seen or not seen, but these are they're little foldable tools. So this particular blade, there's a cutting one, a scoring one, and a perforating one. I don't know if they still make all three of them, but you just open it and there's that little wheel with a little scoring or cutting blade. My favorite one would have to be this dark, this black one, because this is a perforated blade. See that? So if you like to do perforations, maybe you're doing tickets, or maybe you're stamping some tickets and you're cutting it out, you can just take this and roll it across and it will perforate. I'll show you what I mean. If you're working on perforation, I suggest working on some type of mat. And we're going to talk about to cut or not to cut, to poke or not to poke, okay? For cutting, you can cut directly on the glass. However, certain blades will leave a mark. They will leave scratches. It is tempered glass, but it is not indestructible glass. So you just want to be mindful of that. I cut on mine because I'm not really heavy-handed, and honestly, I don't do a lot of cutting. But if I am going to do cutting, I might want to use a cutting mat. So you can see, it's going to gouge into it. If I'm going to do like a perforated blade, I could use the edge if I want. I could take that and I can just run this right along that edge, and you just roll right up. And what this does is it just cuts that little perforation. How cool is that? So maybe you want to do your own, I don't know, it doesn't really look like a postage stamp. It's more like a ticket perf, but maybe you want to kind of use that. I think that's really good. I agree. Paula said I cut on mine too. It's a tool. And that again goes down to personal preference. How do you want to work? I like to work on glass because to me, it cuts smoother, because I find that if I use a cutting mat, sometimes my blade wants to follow the groove in the mat, and I don't have that issue on the glass. But again, you do you. You need to do what you're comfortable with. But when it comes to knives, the Tonic knife, it's evolved through the years. The first one that I did with them years and years ago, it's a retractable knife, but it has cartridge blades, meaning, and you guys might have one of the old ones. The cartridge blade is like, it's an entire plastic thing that you had to put in. And we did those for many years, and it just really got tiresome. And so we relaunched this. Again, this probably was now a couple years ago. Again, time is not good for me. But we redesigned where it's still retractable, but now it has that whole twisting blade mechanism where you can untwist this and you can remove, and you can have replacement blades just like a regular craft knife. And we sell different types of blades. That's why I have two, because I like both of the blades that I designed with them, just for completely different reasons. So the retractable knife is exactly the same. It comes with this type of blade though. It comes with the standard pointy cutting blade. So when you buy this, it will already come with blades. Again, you retract it all the way out, and then you can just use your fingers and twist that, replace the blades, and then you lock it back in so you can cut with it, because you don't need that exposed when you're cutting, unless maybe you're cutting something thick. And then of course it retracts all the way in. And each one, it clicks in. It's like a little spring load. This other blade though, I love this kind of, I don't know, it's like a stubby blade. The reason I like it, you can see if I hold both of them side by side, you can see that the blade length on the stubby is much shorter. And I like this one if I'm going to cut through chipboard. I just like it because I'm making more of that long cut through thicker things. Whereas this one, because it's got that finer point, I'm using it more for paper. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's completely up to you how you want to use it. So when it comes to cutting, if you're cutting, this is where that metal edge comes in. There is a metal edge, because if you try to cut against a regular acrylic ruler, you could cut into the acrylic itself and it starts shaving off. And that is why we embedded that metal rod into each end. So whichever, whether you're doing, again, imperial or metric measurements, you've got it. And there's a little thing on the top that tells you, inch and centimeter, which side of the ruler to work on. But there again, I'm going to cut on both. I'll cut on a cutting mat for those that it'll bring peace of mind that I did it, and then I'm going to cut on the glass for those that will literally freak their freak that I'm doing it. Okay, so with the ruler, I can position it, I can just eyeball it, and it's going to grip. Again, it's going to grip to the paper. So see, the paper doesn't move. This is just a cutting mat. It doesn't have any grip, but the ruler itself, because it's got that grip, is going to help secure the paper and help secure the ruler to the mat. And obviously, we hold a ruler when we're doing it. So that's why it didn't need to be sticky or magnetic. Like I don't have one arm up in the air like I'm at a rodeo. I got to hold something. So I put my hand there, and I'm just going to take the knife, and you just go right along the edge, and you can just cut through it. So when I cut, I guess maybe this is just because how I cut. I'm not just a big like go in and just grab it. I just like to cut in layers. Maybe that's from school, but it'll cut perfectly clean. You're good to go. So that's on a cutting mat. On the glass, if that's your jam, you do you. It is a tool. I mean, I remember when the media mat first came out, oh my gosh, the people that would get their media mat and get one little scratch and just lose their mind, like, I need to send it off to a tooling place to have polished, like it was a car. And I remember Mario's analogy, I always love to say Mario's analogies, about a cutting board. That a cutting board in your kitchen, you might get one and it doesn't matter what it's made out of, it's really nice, but then you go in and you cut on it. Now, the thing to know about cutting on glass, which is true, it will dull your blades faster if you're cutting into glass. But there again, depending on how much cutting you do, that's how it is. Yeah, so, it's not like, oh, I've used it and I got to trash the blade. But, there's people like, well, if you work on glass, it's going to do that. Absolutely true. So here's some things about a ruler and a gridded surface. That's really why I wanted to do a demo. don't worry about where you place it, but if you put your paper down, and again, if you're cutting, I wouldn't have a piece of grip under your paper. That would not be good because you'll end up with tiny little pieces of grip. But the easiest way is, let's say we want to cut an edge. So I could line up my paper to an edge that I want to cut, if I want to make sure that it's straight. I can place the ruler down, and same thing, I can take one of these dark engraved lines, and if I line that up on the paper or line it up on the grid, it's just going to cut an even piece. Does that make sense? So it's just like using the grid around you to line things up. It doesn't, this is crooked. Remember, this is that perforated thing. So it just makes it easy. Heck, let's cut that off. Let's actually square up this piece of paper. This way it's not gonna just drive people bonkers with that. So I'm gonna use this little dash line just as a guide. I'm gonna just line up my, see that black line to that? Just actually use the, the mat for that. Then I'm just gonna hold this down, and same thing. I'm just gonna do my cuts. Because if you do your cuts, you'll kind of feel that it just goes, you can't hear anything, there's no mark. The other thing that's important to know that I learned from Tonic, that not all craft blades are created equal. A lot of people like to use scalpels, which is great, they're very sharp, but that's surgical steel, and surgical steel is really going to take a chunk out of your glass. So this is not surgical steel. So again, I'm not saying they won't mar up your mat over time, but there is not a single little scratch in here from what I just did, because I just cut it. But you do what you're comfortable doing. I don't want to, really get anyone to be like, oh, you've got to cut on your mat. But I just love how smooth it was. So much easier. That's the cutting part. So now we're going to get into the pokey part, the craft pick. Now, again, there's a lot of different craft picks out there. So you need to work with a craft pick that's going to be your best. However, this ruler was designed with this craft pick in mind. So I can't speak for all pokey tools out there. There might be one that is a larger diameter needle that won't work with the ruler, but I think that there's a ton out there that will. So don't by any means think that you need this one to work with this, but definitely test it out, okay? Here's why I did this particular pick. I wanted something with all of these different retractions. You can see that it's got a lot more notches than the knife, because the knife you're either cutting or you're not cutting. It's pretty simple. This one, when you click it out each setting, a little bit of that pick is going to come out. So sometimes you just want to poke a quick little hole, right? You have something and you're like, oh, I just need to get a little starter hole because I'm going to put a pin through something. That's all I need. I don't need to every single time work with this giant spear, right? I don't need to. That's, again, creative options. And this was in the design since day one. Same thing. If I click 2, maybe I'm going through something a little deeper. Maybe it's polymer clay. Maybe I'm going through a piece of chipboard. Again, I can go each time that you increase the length of this needle tool until it gets to about click, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will increase the diameter of the hole it's poking. So if you just have this one, and let's talk about what you pierce on, because your hand is not a good option. I do that often on videos, but hello, safety first. You can use a piece of cork. I have this old piece of cork. I have no idea where it came from, but you can pierce on cork. Another really easy option for piercing, and probably one that I use the most, as you can see, is a piece of craft foam. Just fun foam. You can use anything made out of this foam. Maybe it's the bottom of a flip-flop. Maybe it's something you found at the dollar store that was like a door hanger. It's just what's referred to as EVA foam. Okay, that's what this foam is. This particular one, the craft store, is usually in the kids section. 6 millimeter thick is what they call this one, because you want something thick enough to poke in. But again, you can use whatever you want to use. But if I place this down and I just, again, we have one little click, and I do a poke, it's just going to be, see that tiny little hole? But if I increase this and I pierce, and I actually go into where that hole is, so actually just continue to the diameter of that needle. Again, it doesn't change past click 4. The hole size is much bigger, and anything in between. So maybe sometimes you're just going for aesthetic and you're like, okay, I just want to make some little holes. The nice thing about this pick is that you do have that option for the size of the hole you poke based on how far you extend the needle. But just know that from pretty much 4 on, it's the same diameter. It doesn't go from thin all the way to the thickest at the end. It doesn't. We still needed kind of a standard hole. And this is where the ruler comes in. Like, why would you want holes through a ruler? Well, because sometimes, especially in, I mean, gosh, so many people are doing a lot of stitching and all types of things now, which is great, but there's dies for that too. I was going to bring craft. I'll probably do it on craft. If craft doesn't work, I'll switch to white. But let's say I'm just going to do a card. I want to take my ruler, and now that I'm on foam, I don't necessarily care if my ruler is straight to the craft mat. I'm just looking at the paper itself. But let's say I wanted to poke the holes. Now, the holes that are in this ruler, okay, they're about 1/4 inch in from the edge. So, because to me, I felt like that was like a pretty standard margin that I would want. But there again, if you want more, you can just turn the ruler over. Like, let's say you want them to be, because here's your hole line. Let's say you want them to be, well, I don't know, 1/2 inch or 3/8, 5/8. You could just flip the ruler and now your holes will be further in. Okay, so you could always turn the ruler depending on how far you want the holes in. But here's how it works. So I'm just going to start, I'm going to again take one of the heavy black lines just to go on the edge of the card. I'm going to line this up to the edge of the cardstock. I've got the pick, and then what I can do is literally pierce right through the ruler. Okay, it goes right through the holes. It's just designed to go right through the holes into that ruler. Now, if everything's lined up, I can say, oh, you know what? I want to pierce, I don't know, every 1/2 inch. So I can just skip and follow every 1/2 inch and pierce holes all the way down the side. Again, I'm holding the ruler because after all, it is a grip. And then there you go. You have perfectly spaced holes. If you want them to be closer, they are every 1/4 inch. But then on this side, they change the holes because again, imperial and metric. So these I think are every, oh gosh, I think every centimeter, every 1/2 centimeter. So we didn't even do the hole placement the same. And here's another great feature. Maybe you don't care about imperial and metric. You just like the fact that one side of the ruler, the holes are far apart and one side they're closer together, right? So you might say, hey, you know what? I want to do kind of a faux little stitching thing, so I'm going to flip the ruler over. Again, don't care about imperial and metric, and maybe I don't care how far in. Maybe I just want to eyeball it. But now I can take this side, and notice when I'm holding the pick that I'm holding it straight up. I'm not going in at an angle because this needs to go right through the ruler. And you can poke through really whatever material you want, but I find that this foam is incredibly forgiving. And you don't need to like ream it out. You don't need to like do your little you can, but you don't need to. You can do that later if you plan on sewing, but you just boop, 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 go, and look at that. You just go right through it. Super simple, but that's really why I wanted to do all these little changes. And again, that's where the team at Tonic had so much patience, because I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. Oh, we're going to do this. Oh, you know what? Because at one point it was only holes on one side, metal on the other. And I'm like, yeah, but if I measure a different way, you know, maybe I work with metrics, like why do I have to flip it over to cut? I want to have all the same features regardless of how I choose to measure. But then it also, to me, provided more options, because whether I measured imperial or metric, I now got different hole options. I like that. I thought that was really, really great. And to me, it was the grip rails. So the grip rails are just like the grip from everything else, meaning that it has that, like, it's not sticky, it's just grippy. So if you find that for whatever reason your ruler is now sliding everywhere because you keep it in a drawer or you keep it in a can, or maybe you just have it hanging and dust has collected on it, which is okay. You don't have to wrap this in plastic wrap when you're done using it. You don't. But if you find that it's not gripping as much anymore, just go in with water. That's all that's in here. You could just take a damp cloth. It could be a baby wipe. It could be, or you run it under the sink and you're just going to wipe over the grip rails, and that's going to make them really grippy all over again. So it's never going to lose its stick because it's not sticky. It's a grip. And all you have to do is clean the dust off the grip and you'll be good to go. So that's kind of the highlight of those particular tools. It's just really, to me, it works. And I know that everybody would have a different option. You know, I saw someone's like, you should do a T-square. Yes, but I don't use a T-square because of really how I use my mat. But I get it. Yeah, it could have been that. Someone said, oh, you know, it'd be great if it was short. I get there could be many, many options. But to me, this was a great place to start because I think that this ruler has everything that I needed to have. So I didn't need to do any of those other things. And I like that. It's a great way to work with it. And I think I just think even the hole options, this is very cool for, like, I don't do stitching on cards, but I love doing a lot of industrial kind of steampunk stuff. A lot of times I'll take like an embossing folder, and you can emboss through it and then poke holes, and then you can go through it with wire, or you can take little staples and fold in for fake metal stitching. There's a lot of great things that we can use, but just know for this ruler, you don't have to worry about these markings rubbing off, because again, they're etched in there, laser etched. And then we've got the grip rails, metal on both sides, and the piercing holes when you go to use it. So that's the media ruler. Pretty great. Did I cover everything that, I mean, I said to Mario, I'm like, seriously, what am I going to talk about with a ruler? Well, he says, you'll find something. If I know you, you'll have no problem talking even about a ruler. But it is cool, because as a...
You are loving your ruler.
Thanks.
Really.
Because as a maker, I can get excited about tools. And it doesn't mean, again, it's the best of the best. It was just the fact that, like, I had a ruler that I thought was the best ruler when I designed it with Advantis, with Ideology. And at the time, it was great, that design ruler with the pokey. But as you continue to make it work, things can always get better, and think about the whole option when it comes to working with it. And I think that's what I love. Someone did ask about a centering feature. See that little dark line right there? That's the center of your ruler. So there's your centering feature. So if you put that in the middle of, especially if you're using the centering part of your media mat, that's your center. And then that's going to be an inch from center, and so on and so forth. But that, of course, only works with the Imperial with inches. There's not a centering just because it didn't come out even on this one when you flip it over to centimeters. But that was the only centering mark that I wanted to do, because it was already integrated on the mat. So there you go.
Man.
All right. So let's just talk about the glass and working on glass and things that you can and cannot do. Or let me rephrase that. Should or should not do. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. Wow, I'm getting pretty good at this. It freaks me out though every time. Okay. We're going to talk about different mediums and whatnot that you could use on it. So let's say you're just working on the glass studio mat, or even your glass media mat, but we're not working on the craft sheet part. We're working directly on the glass. You can use anything you want on this glass. And I just want to be clear, because since launch, I've already seen some websites that had, well, a little bit of misinformation saying, don't use this, don't use this. And really, that stuff is not true. So I want to just talk about things that you can use and what to do if you use it. So we're going to talk about pastes and glues. You can use a variety of glues. It could be collage medium, glossy accents, even resist spray, but different, and even different texture paste. But different things are going to dry differently. Anytime you have a water-based medium of any kind, if you clean it while it's wet, it makes it so much easier. Meaning, if I had some collage medium, so maybe I just had some, I'm going to open this up, and I had some glue, there's some collage medium, and I had it on the mat. Okay, if you clean it up while it's wet, and I would just use, I like to use a paper towel, but you can just spray water on it. This is just water. Anything water-based will come off easy with water while it's wet. But if for whatever reason the stuff dried, you're like, okay, this stuff is dry, it's not on there. Well, now you have to go to plan B. You can still spray it with water. It's just going to take a long time to clean it off. You can try different adhesive removers, but I don't think you need to do that. You can try using a scraper like this. This kind of scraper is going to be fine with texture paste. Anything thicker, this will really get in there. But if you have things like resist spray and glossy accents, something that dries very thin and very shiny, and it is dry on there, and you feel like little speed bumps, my advice is to find yourself this type of razor blade thing. I do not know the name of it. It is not a TIM tool. You can find it pretty much at a hardware store or whatever. But this is just it fits a standard razor blade, but it's got this little holder. And it just allows you to go in and actually scrape this off of the glass much easier than just using, I mean, it's just a single edge razor blade, but I like that it's in a little holder, and you can bind these.
They have them at the dollar store too.
Dollar store has them too. But this is how you would scrape off any kind of dried anything. It could be paint, it could be anything, is just a straight edge razor blade. That makes it easy, okay? You're not going to damage the glass by doing that scraping motion, because we're not gouging into it, we're just scraping it off. So that would be glues. okay? Adhesive, paste, really any of those things. If you use inks, we're going to start talking about permanent ink first. And this could be archival ink, this could be StazOn, this could be any kind of permanent ink. And you get ink on your, get a lot of ink. You can get ink on your glass because maybe you're stamping, maybe you're doing whatever you want. You have options there. This, because it's permanent ink, it is not water-based, it's oil-based. So water is not really going to clean an oil-based product off very easy, okay? I just saw I have glossy speed bumps. That's really what they are. The razor blade will take it right off. So you would use, first off, whatever cleaner is designed for that product. So in this case, archival cleaner would clean off archival ink. I could just apply some of that, take a cloth, and you can see that archival cleaner will clean that right off. No staining, no nothing, done. But if you don't have this cleaner, there are other options that you can use to clean really anything permanent off of your surface, and that's going to be hand sanitizer, because that's alcohol, or just alcohol itself, rubbing alcohol. You can use rubbing alcohol and you can clean off permanent inks and even dried paints. Sanitizer takes off dried paint and paste really great. So maybe you're not into razor blades and you're like, look, this will freak me out. I don't want a razor blade in my craft room. Well, then hand sanitizer, you can put on dried glue or dried paint, rub that in, wait just a couple of seconds, and really it'll wipe right off because the hand sanitizer attacks any of those dry things. Alcohol wipes, I saw that question, that would work. Any solvent, doesn't really matter the form that it comes in. I just often prefer sanitizer because it's gel and it just stays wet longer. You know, where when you're using like rubbing alcohol, it dries almost instantly. So sanitizer, gone. And it's clean and it's sanitized. So there you go, it's a win-win. So those are options when it comes to, again, permanent inks, any kind of permanent inks that you have. Now, tools that you want to avoid before we get into inks would be things like sandpaper, okay? And this really falls under the category of common sense, but sometimes as makers, and I'm guilty of it as well, sometimes my common sense is, well, it's up for speculation that when I'm in the creative mode, you know, where I just don't even think about it and I'm like on it. Sandpaper, if you use sandpaper directly on glass, it's going to scratch it. That would be no different than using sandpaper on your windshield of your car. You just wouldn't do it. So you shouldn't do it on your glass mat. If you're going to sand, put down a piece of chipboard. If you want to work on your glass mat, put down something that the sandpaper is not going to go through because it will leave scratches. Any kind of sandpaper will scratch the glass. That's just something that happens, but avoid doing that. So I do want to mention it because you're like, well, he did use a knife on it. Yes, but that's different than sandpaper that would absolutely destroy it. So I've done it. So I can't say that I haven't. I've definitely sand, and it just leaves like a nice little texture in the glass. Not that we want to do that. Okay, let's talk about product. And let me tell you, I brought pretty much every product I could think of from my line with Ranger just to try to answer questions. Will it work with inks? Yes. So we already talked about permanent inks and how you clean that up, but let's just talk about regular ink pads, distress and oxide. How does it blend? Well, blending on glass is really the reason I did a glass mat years ago, because I felt that blending ink on glass was way better than on a craft mat, because this is completely smooth and it allowed for this effortless blend, whether you're using blending foams or any kind of blending brush. I prefer glass because it also doesn't absorb the medium. And so I felt the only way to really show that is to kind of demo it side by side. That'd be a fair statement. So I'm just gonna show you that on blending, and I won't do everything side by side, but it'll at least just show you on this one. So let me bring in, I'll just bring in this piece. Just going to bring in this little piece of craft mat from the medium mat, because I don't want to cover my whole surface, because I still want to show you the difference between that and glass. You guys can see that? Oh, here. Let me not drive myself crazy. Let's at least grit it up, Holtz. Like, don't be ridiculous. There you go. Should I have moved it over to that black line? Yes. Do I have issues? Yes. Yes. Do I embrace them?
Yes.
Without question. Okay. Without question. So ink blending, let's do something. I don't mind this color. We'll do peacock feathers. I'll do something colorful. Why not? When it comes to working on your mat, you also have creative options with the media grip. I have media grip for everything. You have no idea. I use this stuff, honestly, all the time. Grip for my ink pads as well. That's why I cut it up in different sizes, because once I did it, I have it indefinitely. I think on my blog, I even have like a little template of how I cut it down. I don't remember. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. So I've got an ink pad, and we'll just talk about just regular ink blending, and we'll show the difference. So I'll take just a little piece of cardstock, doesn't matter the paper. Let me find, I'm going to use a tiny blending tool just because I feel like it. So I like the fact that when I have an ink pad on the grip, gosh, why am I playing off camera? It's weird. If I can't see it, you can't see it. I just like the fact that I don't have to hold on to the ink pad. So here I'm going to ink from the glass. So this is just going to be, just be light-handed at first. Just be really, really light-handed. Get that fresh ink around the edge first. Now, could you grip the paper? Some people like to have their paper on the grip when they're blending. I don't, because when I ink blend, I like to move the paper around instead of trying to be a contortionist, because I feel like when I move my hand, it just applies a different amount of pressure. So I just find it much easier to just use the paper and let it just slide, just move it around. Okay, the benefit of this is that when I'm blending, I'm actually using up the ink that's there. So nothing, if you just keep going, you're gonna get every little bit of ink off of that glass. And you can just make a, you know, as the ink starts to be used up from the mat, you can just make larger circles, and we can still just go in. And I see a lot of people do this and then they tap this. I would say the only time you have to do that is if you're trying to ink something from the center. But if you're inking something from the edge, you just remember just like lighter pressure to start. And I'll show you the difference. So here's just what I consider light pressure. That means my fingers are not any different color than the rest of my hand. And you can see that even fresh ink is perfect. But if I go in and I push down and I start, that is really going to be a challenge to fade out. But then when I push down, see how my fingers change a different color? So I don't think it's so much about tapping the ink off as it is just become one with the ink, just kind of groove, because then you can just really see my fingers like, I'm out of here. I don't know why it does that. You just make a, and this is with a tiny tool. My gosh, if this was a regular blending tool, we would have long been done. Okay, so that's kind of the benefit of working from glass. Now let's do this from the mat itself. Okay, not saying that you can't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about the difference. The difference is going to be a little bit more of what I call drag. And you don't notice the drag if you don't have options. If you've never inked on glass, you wouldn't think that there is any drag whatsoever. But even when I'm working on this mat and I continue to move my paper around and I continue to try to work from the circles, even if I go over this, I can't use up that ink. That ink is there. There is ink there, but because this is a textured surface, it doesn't release all the ink. And the ink is still there. The ink is wet. I mean, when I add water to it, you'll see, like, there's going to be ink there. Not a lot. So I'm not saying it's not about a wasting thing, like, oh, you're wasting your ink if you do that. It's just the fact that, you know, I like that I can, and there's a little bit of ink residue on here because I haven't used it all, but you could use it all up. So there's a little bit of ink there. I'm not saying it's ink proof. It's just going to be down to creative options. What do you feel? And if you haven't done any ink blending on glass, give it a whirl. It is very, very nice. It is. It's just like, I don't know, you're just gliding across. But that's a benefit. And remember, again, when you're blending, and let's go in with oxide, because oxide is also just, it's a delicious one to blend. Let's not do pink. Let's do, ooh, I like this green. In the green mode, crushed olive for sure. Let's use that. Let's do a little ink blend on this. I'll do a little tag here. So same thing, I'm just going to start a little bit of pressure, very light, but see all that oxide? Ooh, so good. And then I'm just going to go in. Tiny tools are not meant for big backgrounds, but hey, that's what I brought, and that's what I'm using. But I have my big blending tools on my ink spinner on my table. But just for the sake of the demo, you get the idea, because You can blend with anything. It's just about knowing the tips. Now that it's on the glass, I don't need to get more ink. Don't get more ink until you need it. This is how you keep things from, and then, hey, Mario, could you grab me a Post-it? I'll just take one of your Post-its, please.
Yeah.
It's just you can use Post-it notes, you can use, thank you. Yeah. If you take Post-it notes, or you can take any kind of tape, even washi tape, stick it to your fingers and use that instead of your fingers, then you won't leave fingerprints in your ink. And we're just gonna blend. There's some little foam nuggets that came off, there you go. But that's just a good little tip, because then you're not going to, I think maybe the first time I saw that, maybe that was Christina that did it. I don't know who did. You never know who did it first, it's just where you saw it. But that's a whole other way that we can just go in and blend and blend. We can do all of our spraying, adding a little bit of water. As I mentioned, the glass and the mat, it's completely heat stable. So I'm just gonna plug in my heat tool real quick, and we'll do a little drawing. Because there's nothing to worry about when it comes to really creating on a surface. And again, we're starting with just ink blending. So I'm just going to dry that first. I'm just going to dab off some of that because we can. Just to get, see, just an easy kind of cool background. So totally heat stable with heat gun or embossing, completely fine. Really, really nice. Yeah, I saw you sometimes forget to, well, see, you can tell I always forget to mask my fingers too, but sometimes, most of the time it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to put something else on it, but it's just a good tip, especially if you like to do ink blending. And that was, I mean, with that little tool, that was a challenge. Like I said, if it was a regulation size blending tool, we would have been done. So blending, I prefer the glass. But now when we're doing ink backgrounds, this is why this was a must when I did the first mat with Tonic, because I like to do a lot of wet techniques. Be that with ink pads as well as sprays, okay? Any kind of sprays. I just prefer that on a mat, and I'll show you why. If you're going to do some wet techniques, and let's do some, we'll do some brown, a little mix. I'm gonna put some ink first. Let me clean this, just to be fair. I wanna play as fair as possible when I'm showing a comparison. I got a little green there. There we go. That's gone, totally clean. Okay, I'm gonna take, and this could be distress ink, this could be oxide. I'm gonna squish some ink there, and I'm gonna squish some ink there, okay? I'm going to, let's mix up a few colors. Let's do a little there, a little there. Now, granted, ink on glass, ooh, it shows up so much better than it does over here, doesn't it? It's like, oh, that's so pretty. Don't be fooled by that. Okay, do a little bit of blue. Yeah, because it always looks better on the glass. You're like, oh, see, you should use the glass. Not necessarily. Because now when it comes to water, that's where these two surfaces completely change. When I use water on glass, my inks just, hey, how you doing? Good, how are you? Oh, good, let's get together. Cool, let's have a pool party. And they just go to town. They mix. When I use a craft mat, it's like, hey, how's it going? Hey, keep your distance. I'm good over here. Nice to see you, but don't come over here. That's the big difference. So when you're doing, see, they have personalities, can you tell? Yes. So when you're doing backgrounds, if I'm trying to do an inky background on glass, it just gets really muddy really quick. Not that it's wrong, but it's very hard to control, and what you get is very soupy. Again, it's not that you cannot do it. I just want to show you creative options. That's what I think it's always, oh, there goes a magnet. I don't need that. That was what was holding my background onto my metal table. See, that's why I don't like them. They jump. All right, gonna dry that. So now if I try to go back into this, I'm just picking up more color, but it's different. You'll see in a second, side by side, okay? Everything is just wet, and I'm trying to save colors, but brown is, you know, brown is boss. So this is not saying that this background is wrong in any way. It's just incredibly different from what we're going to see over here. Okay, there's our background from glass. This one, I need to add a little bit more water there. Can you see the droplets? That's really what you want. You want, when you're working with inks, you want to see droplets of color. And no matter how much water you add to this, What's really interesting is that the ink it stays. So even taking it off, like the ink stays on this material. That's why this material, believe it or not, it's really important, because especially if you do inking, it's all about how that ink maintains its, I'll just say, its position on a craft mat. So now we'll take a piece of cardstock. This could be a tag, this could be whatever, but I'm just going to use watercolor, and I'm going to do the same thing. Now, when I go in for my first dip, I can still dip, but they all stayed put. So even when you dip, remember on this one, they kind of all got together even more. Everything maintains its space. That's why it is important to have those creative options and understand why. That's the other thing, you know, it's really understanding why it is. And so again, if you have a glass mat and you don't need a new one, and you don't have any type of craft mat, you can buy this piece. This is sold, and again, it's just has no frills, no corners, no nothing. Or you can buy 2 different sizes, and you don't have to buy the big one because you have a big glass mat. It just depends on how much inking you're going to do. That's why even the travel size might work. The difference is the rubber corners or not. It's exactly the same material. It's just about the corners. So now we'll go in and just start dipping into these colors. This is where we're really going to have a completely different background than this, because all of those little ink dots are very, very important. And we can add some water if you want to blend, but it's these dots that make that magical look. I love that. Did you say that the media mat, not the glass media mat? No, we're talking about just the craft mat, that if you wanted to put it in the dishwasher, you could, but I wouldn't put your glass mat in the dishwasher. No, that just you could use glass cleaner as well, but no, I was just talking about this mat. And so I'm just going to layer. Now I'll tell you another cool feature about this, just because we're talking about dots, because see all those dots? Yeah. And I did use ground espresso, which is cheap, but you can also see the intensity of the color. Let's say I want to add just some more peacock feathers to this, or maybe I want to add oxide. Maybe I'll do a little bit of both. Okay, I'm going to squish some ink on there, and when I'm applying ink, you are squishing. You're pushing and squishing, and I'm going to spray this with water to get my droplets. Now, if you went in, you're gonna actually mark that much color, but we don't want that because we have this background. We want to add color. I'll do it to both. Just take your fingers and just break it up. Okay, I didn't swirl it, I just broke it up. So now I get bigger drips. And if you wipe this off of your fingers while it's wet, it doesn't leave as much of a stain. But now I can go in and just do the dance. So instead of having a big blob of blue or green, I can actually just layer it. And while I'm drying this one, I'm gonna dip this one. And at this point, I'm just kind of like splashing in puddles. See, look at that. Look at that oxide that's going to go there. Ooh, real nice. That to me it's important to just understand surfaces. It really is about surfaces. Okay. Just going to keep going. All right. Yeah, I saw that airdrop. I know it showed up on the screen, Mario airdropped. I'm like, I can't even see anything. Yeah, everyone saw the airdrop pop up my phone on the video, and I'm like, I can't even see my video. So everyone's like, I'll accept an airdrop. There you go. I've never seen that before. All right, so now I'm just gonna, again, tap back into that ink, but see how I can build. The reason oxide is a great option is because oxide, of course, will allow that to sit right over the top of it. All right. Yeah, everyone's trying to accept the airdrop now, Mario. When you airdropped, it came to, because my account, it came to my phone, so it came to the video. Oh. There we go.
Well, if anyone accepted it, then they already saw some winning.
Yeah. There we go. All right. So, just going to do one more layer, do another layer here, and just kind of show you just the difference again going on both sides. There you go. So, this was all craft mat. This was started with glass, and then just those little drips had to do with the mat. So that to me is really important when it comes to inking, and the same applies with sprays. If you're doing sprays, the sprays are going to act just like the ink pad did, meaning they're going to kind of stay put, but you can also just spray over your glass. That is a benefit, whether I'm creating some backgrounds. You know, maybe I wanted to add some color over some backgrounds. I can certainly just go right over the glass. That's fine. I can mix my colors because I'm spraying, so it's really easy if you're working in a journal or something like that, just to create directly on the glass. But I do love the fact that, see the colors on the studio mat, they're so much more, I don't know, just vibrant and intense. They're beautiful to work on. So now as this is drying, I'm just going in with water and I'm just going to spray. That's the other thing to keep in mind when you're doing any kind of inking work. Don't hose everything down. Just play around with it. You could always go back and do a little bit of blending, but the nice thing about sprays to me is that they spray. And so I want kind of a spray pattern. Otherwise, I would do it with an ink pad. Or maybe sprays are your only thing you have, or maybe you only have ink. I'll show you what I mean. You see all these little colorful flecks, these little speckly flecklies? They're nice. And that's from the spray. That's spritzing on the color and not hosing it all down with water. This, you could still go in and pick it up. You could pick it up with paper, a brayer. I'm going to continue to dry this. Maybe I'll add just a little bit more water just to create a whole nother look of kind of a bleachy look. And then I can take a paper towel and I can just blot up some of that ink. So that's a quick background with sprays, but this stuff, I mean, it's beautiful on the mat, is it not? I will admit that I like the fact that I could see these remnants and go, oh, hey, you know what? I'm going to take that blended card that I messed up. You didn't, but you know, and I'm just going to pick up some color because you kind of get what you get. Is it going to be great like the craft mat? No. Is it going to pick up some color? Yeah, it will. It's not going to pick up a ton, but you can certainly pick up from the glass because now that you see that it's white, it's pretty much like a palette and you can just pick up colors and that could be a background. Maybe for a silhouette of something. I don't know, a lot of options. I do like options. I think, how many times did I say options during this? Because that's what it's about. And I'm just cleaning this with water because it's water-based, just using a cloth. Okay, so we talked about sprays. We talked about, we'll talk about pencils, crayons, glazes. Those are easy. We talked about embossing. So yes, you can use your embossing powders on it. Can you use crayons and pencils? Of course, it's just a glass mat. You can color directly on that and wipe it off. But the big question that I saw right from launch, because it was white, and I think this is where I saw the misinformation the most, is alcohol ink. Because when we talk about alcohol inks, and especially when the first media mat came out, we did put a disclaimer that if you use alcohol ink on this material, it will stain it immediately. It doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it certainly means that it's going to stain it. And I think that maybe some of that education just got spilled over to this new mat. Not true. You can use alcohol ink directly on this white glass studio mat without any problem. So I'm just going to ink up this whole thing. Let's move it around and that's going. I'm going to just take some alcohol inks and we're going to go, we'll just do something fun. I'm not even going to create something. I'm just going to, so don't be all judgy, right? I'm just going to show you just for the sake of the demo. Because people are like, what? Why are you doing that? So wasteful. Yes, but it's going to be pretty. So let's just take some colors. And I'm even using intense colors like if you've ever used raspberry and alcohol ink, like It Means Business or rosewood. Oh my gosh, rosewood is such a deep, dark burgundy red, but also very, very cool. Maybe we want to use some orange. Let's just do a bunch of colors because I kind of feel like if I'm going to show this, then is that going to be that person that says, oh, well, you didn't really use yellow, so does that mean you can't use yellow? No, any color. The whole purpose is to not be afraid of new surfaces. Oh, I did see Sherry said, no, Judge Judy. I said that in the last one. Mario was laughing where I'm like, put down the gavel, Judge Judy. Like there's people that just, they're so quick to judge everything. And I think when you're busy judging, you don't even, your mind's not even open to actually get the right information. So here's a little teal. Look at this nice rainbow we're putting on there. It's going to be a beautiful inky blend that we're going to do absolutely nothing with, but look at it and clean it up. But it's still going to be fun. All for the sake of the live. There we go. Put some purple on there, and of course let's go in with some brown. See, as we get darker, you can tell the inks get thicker, huh? You see how the colors completely change, even their format. I love that. Okay, so we put down a bunch of colors of alcohol ink. Now, the point of this was not for a technique, although we could do a technique with it, but that's not really why I wanted to show you. I just wanted to show you that if you had ink because maybe you were using, oh gosh, I don't even know. I'll use some alcohol or blending solution, you know, so maybe you were using this on a background and you had some Yupo paper and you were kind of, you know, moving your colors around. I don't know what you were doing. You were just doing what you were doing. Okay, but we were playing and we had inks everywhere. Alcohol ink, whether it's wet or dry, will clean off of this mat. And there's many options. If you have blending solution, I don't recommend cleaning with blending solution. This stuff costs too much money to clean with. It has a resin in it as well. So even if you use it as a cleaner, it's gonna leave behind some of that resin. So if you're using any type of permanent ink, I recommend the same thing that I talked about with permanent ink pads, and that would be just alcohol, whether it's a spray or this is just isopropyl alcohol or hand sanitizer. That will also clean it up. So let me just spray this with alcohol just so you can see that it will continue to like re-wet, and you could, well gosh, we have a pretty rainbow. This may not turn into anything, but hey, I got Yupo here and I got ink, so that's it. So, but I could let's just clean it up this way. Let's do a little bit, ooh, look at that. And let's just clean it up this way. I don't know what I'm gonna use this for, but I'll just use this as something at some point. And then maybe I'll just spray right down the middle just because. This is just my cleanup, but I'm just gonna keep that because, well, I'm just spraying some isopropyl because I think it's cool. Maybe I'll put something in the middle, it looks torn. Okay, yeah, I just picked that up. But the reality is, oh gosh, I could keep going. See, I just wanna do it again. I'm just gonna spray with more alcohol. I wasn't totally going to, but hey, there's ink and there's Yupo. Now let's do a longer drag and see. Woo, I'm liking this. Because alcohol ink, really, it's just one of the most forgiving mediums. You could just play and play. It's crazy what we can do with it. But the whole point was just to show you that, oh wow, I love these. Look at that one where I sprayed it. The whole point was just to show you that you can clean it up, but see, opportunity. You just have to keep your perspective open to be like, I was gonna do this, but I could keep going, but I won't because there's, my gosh, now I'm gonna have backgrounds drying everywhere. Okay, focus, Holtz. I could continue to spray alcohol or I could do hand sanitizer. The point is, it's easy to clean. You can clean this off. It is not going to permanently stain the glass mat. It isn't. You just have to use a solvent of some type to break through the ink to clean that off because the glass is on the top. The printing is underneath the glass. So anything that you put on this white glass mat, you're not going to stain it. Okay, so that was just really important. You just need to make sure that you're cleaning it with the right things. And that could be, if it's a solvent or anything that is permanent, you're better off with rubbing alcohol, hand sanitizer, or glass cleaner. Glass cleaner is also, you know, we have that spray foamy glass cleaner. That works great as well, but it will clean it off and it won't leave any tint whatsoever when it comes to working with it. So I think that's what's important to remember. And well, I think that about wraps it up. I mean, there's so many things. Of course, if you're going to use product like spritz or any type of pigmented product, that would be that or acrylic paint or anything kind of pearlized, just remember that the pearl in here is a particle. So that one requires a little bit more cleanup. Nothing intense, just that if you have any type of, why do I keep grabbing that? Let's go with orange. Any kind of a pigment with a dye, just gonna shake this up. I'll just show you again. Let's just say I'm gonna spray a background. Okay, that's gonna be fine. That's just spritz though. It has no color other than the mica. But when you go to clean this up, and I'm going to dry it intentionally just so you see what I mean. I'm going to dry the paper, but I'm really trying to dry pigment on here. Anytime that we have paint, yeah, the tin. So where does tin is going to be like, we said early fall. So I think they're looking at like maybe that first week of, I don't want to say it, but like early October, which is going to be good. So it's still another month, but it's going to be worth it. I love this. All right. So these, of course, we have just that. I mean, look at that beautiful shine. I would have spritzed this over something, but pigment. pigment is it's a particle. So when you try to clean it with water, it will clean with water, but sometimes it doesn't come off of the glass. We'll see if it's going to do that. The camera's not going to pick it up, but it will often leave like a little bit of a halo, and that's just because of the pigment particles. So my advice when you're cleaning any kind of mica product off of your glass is to use water, use a paper towel, even though you might use, a soft cotton towel, and work from top to bottom, almost like a squeegee. And if you had a squeegee, you can use a squeegee. And the reason I say that is because, see that pigment? You're actually pushing it off, almost like, maybe now you can see it. See, there's a little bit of orange over here. It's almost like, like Coin Dozer, if you know that game. But you're using this to kind of push those particles off to the side, and when they hit the edge, the towel picks them up. But if you clean it this way, you're kind of moving the particles around and you don't see them. But then when you go to use something, you're like, what is this all over it? So that's just my advice if you're using any kind of pigmented product. Just clean your mat differently. Just kind of go from top to bottom, and that's going to pick up any of that excess stuff, and that's it. Makes it easy. So, you wouldn't think that matters, but I've used this enough to know that, well, it matters. So there you go. That is the new glass studio mat in both regular and travel size, which I absolutely love. And I mean, I know I've read so many comments where you're like, I didn't think I would come here and think that I needed a ruler, but the fact that we have a ruler that grips is just, it's so cool.
That ruler is the best.
Especially when you have little tools. So this right here, these are the new tools, but hopefully the surface and tool overview, Tonic, is very helpful.